Hello, and welcome to a special episode of the Hesed Marriage Podcast. We are on our way to Atlanta. I am part of a coaching group called Generosity Generation for real estate with Michael Mayer, and we are on our way to Atlanta, Georgia for a real estate conference. So I'm literally looking forward to that, and I brought my favorite sidekick with me.
I'm Vanna White.
So today there is a topic that is very close to our hearts because this was something that we had to work through in the early years of our marriage.
Still
working through, very true. So the question that I have is, have you ever noticed how you keep having the same arguments, or you keep having the same arguments that just are ongoing in your marriage, and it doesn't seem like they ever get cleared up or resolved? Seems like they keep coming around, and any little trigger will set you off, and then you're like, well, where did that come from? You know?
Or it's like a never-ending argument. It just keeps coming back up.
Yeah. So why do those such small moments, or what would be a small moment, like forgetting to load the dishwasher after dinner, or folding the towels incorrectly, or random socks being on the floor from the kids?
Square fold towels.
I mean, why do those things keep coming up as a huge fight, or they end up turning into a huge fight? And so...
Well, one of the things we had to learn through this, because we had a lot of... When we first got married, the first probably 3, 4, 5 years, we had a lot of passionate discussions.
I like how you said passionate so gently.
Passionate discussions. And it was seemingly over the smallest of things, which... Honestly, there was part of me was like, is this what marriage is going to be like? Like, we're going to argue and fight over dishes and what we're going to eat for dinner, and who's cleaning up the apartment, and who's having to fold the clothes, and why did I have to fold them twice this week and you didn't fold them, or why didn't you put them up when you got done folding them? And I was like, this is just all minutia. Like, why are we arguing and fighting? And when in reality, what we ended up figuring out, unfortunately, after too long of a period of time, it's a little embarrassing, was we had some deeper things that we were struggling with, some more core issues, core beliefs, or worldviews, however you want to phrase it, that most of the time were never effectively communicated. So we had an unrealistic expectation that we were imposing on our spouse and holding them to a standard that in a lot of cases they didn't even know we had in mind or even wanted.
Yeah, so one of the things is, if you realize, if you keep running into the same conflict, if it keeps becoming a thing, maybe the issue isn't your spouse. And if you're willing to take a step back, maybe the issue is something deeper inside of you. And so we wanted to call this episode Mirror Mirror, and that is being able to understand that marriage is a beautiful example of a mirror, and your spouse should have the opportunity, or should be given the opportunity, to reflect your strengths, your weaknesses, and your insecurities.
And whether you like it or not, they're going to reflect your spouse and your kids, the people that live the closest to you, are going to reflect the good, the bad, and the ugly about you. And we've talked about it before in a different way, calling it own your own, that in every situation, look for what you can do to improve. And if there's something you're not liking about the situation, work on your aspect of it, which is predominantly what we're going to address today, or what we want to talk about today.
And a lot of times, sometimes that frustration that we feel towards our spouse is actually something that we feel unresolved that's within us, you know. And I found that with me especially, there's times where I get frustrated because I don't feel like he communicates very well with me, or I'm not on the same level. I've always said that. That's been something that I've said repeatedly over and over in our marriage, is that I'm just not at the same level as you. You're like at a level 10 and I'm at a level not 10, and we're just not communicating at the same level. And that's...
Don't belittle me in the conversation is what you used to say a lot.
Right. I would say, why are you talking to me like that? I can understand what you're saying. And it was really a self-reflection of, I felt inadequate. That's a core issue that I've struggled with, is that I'm either not intelligent enough, I just don't cut it, I don't make sense, I'm all over the place. Those are core issues that I have had to deal with. Because first of all, they're lies from the enemy. Some of them are a little bit true, just with my personality, but I should not, and you should never allow your personality to define what God has placed within you. And I think a lot of times, especially in our society, people identify with, well, I'm this way because, or I react that way because. And again,
they shouldn't have made me feel that way.
They shouldn't have made me feel that way. And so of course there's the trauma piece. And you had said a statement earlier that understanding the difference between trauma and core issues.
Oh, I said that I would challenge. We were talking about this episode a little bit before we were driving, or while we were driving before we started recording, and I said I really feel like a big piece of it is acknowledging that not all core issues are major traumas in your life, and that they can be, but really I would challenge you and submit that you may redefine a core issue as anything that's stealing peace or joy repetitively out of your marriage. Because if it is, it's stealing fulfillment and the maximum effectiveness that you can have in your relationship out of something that arguably isn't as nearly as important. And so when you look at it that way, it could be stuff as silly as the towels, right? And folding the towels, doing the dishes. It could be stuff as serious as infidelity or different financial languages and stuff like that. But it also, like I said, could be just silly stuff. And understanding that, it's the same approach to work through them, can make it a lot more effective and save a lot of headaches and a lot of passionate discussions.
One of the things that Michael brought up while we were talking...
And sorry, we are sitting still on the highway, so I'm looking at the camera. We're not driving at the moment. There's a wreck, so we're sitting still.
One of the things that Michael actually brought up while we were talking about this was something that would be considered a core value or cultural value in your family dynamic. And something that we both reflected on was, for us growing up, dinner at the table with the family was a non-negotiable. And so we carried that into our culture, and there have been times where I have not been at the dinner table with the family because of, something with work.
A checklist in her head that she wants to get done.
True.
And so I'm like, no, table.
True. And that's something that was the norm for us. Well, you take someone that didn't grow up that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you take someone that didn't grow up that way, the idea or the concept, especially if I had grown up that way, and then you blend our cultures together, and Michael's was very much, we have to be around the dinner table together, there would be a conflict. There would be an issue that arises there. And the husband or the person that came from the culture of, or the dynamic that we always eat dinner together at the dinner table as a family, versus someone that maybe would not have, and that becomes a real issue. And that person that has had that culture feels like this person does not value me, they don't want to spend time with me, and all of a sudden all of these issues start to...
Everything else gets amplified because of that offense that I would take. Does that make sense?
Can you say that again?
Everything else gets amplified. Yeah. All the other perceived wrongs are amplified because they just don't respect me, which was a lie, because we found this out actually year 3 or 4. Whenever Megan had asked me one time, she goes, or maybe later, she said, what is a way that I can show you respect and honor? And I told her, I said, well, I may need to get back with you on that, because it's not really something that I can just sit here and honestly say, do this, this, and this, and I'll feel respected. But then I remember one night we had the kids, or it was Soph and Judah, I think at the time, or maybe it was just Soph, but we were sitting there eating, And Megan just was so busy trying to do just things around the house to stay busy. She never sat down, and I caught myself feeling disrespected because I remember telling her, sometimes it's hard for me to tell you how to respect me, but I can definitely tell at times when I don't feel respected. So let's talk about those at times, and then maybe what's left over is the respect. And then the genesis part of this conversation came from that, because it was the time I was like, I didn't even realize that sitting down at the table and having dinner together
was a core value
to me, that I wanted to hold on to my family. And the busier and the older our kids got, the more hectic it got, the more it was a non-negotiable for me. And now I say at the table. Now we may be going somewhere, but we're going to eat together. We're not going to everybody grab a meal and disappear somewhere. I'll go sit on the couch and watch TV, or some kids run outside and just eat here and then eat there, and the twins eat at, this time, then an hour later the older kids eat, then an hour after that we eat. It's like, to me, it's a daily check-in with everybody in the family to make sure we see how everybody's doing, what they got going on, how their day was, and a touch point that I don't want to lose.
Yeah, there was another core issue that we had to address, and that was I did not feel, like I said, I didn't feel like I was adequate. And it actually manifested itself in me pursuing a career in nursing to prove that I was good at math. It also it drove me to constantly try to be that outperform, because I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't dumb, that I wasn't bad at math, and all of these things that I had developed as a kid, just thinking that I wasn't capable. And it became such that whenever we would have conversations, like I've said before, I would have to tell him, why you're going to have to bring it down. You're going to have to bring it down because I don't understand what you're saying. And he was like, you are capable. You are able to comprehend and understand what I'm saying. You're just choosing not to.
I said you're selling yourself short.
You're selling yourself short, right?
Because you've convinced yourself that you lack the aptitude to be able to understand this, and you do. This isn't rocket science. Although we did talk about rocket science. But
yeah, he would lose me there. But
the things that we were talking about weren't super complex, but it was just in her mind because it was a technical field.
And he was open enough, and he was willing to listen long enough that I could share, this is why I feel this way. This is where this is coming from. And I may even bring up a memory that I had growing up, or I would be able to share that with him. Or early on in our marriage, where there was something that was said, and I know that you're not supposed to hold on to those things. So take this from, growing. Do not hold on to misunderstandings that come from heated discussions.
Or when you feel jaded by a discussion or belittled, address it. Don't let it fester, because it may not have been a slight. And none of the comments that were ever made were ever meant to be a slight or derogatory, but because of
where I was at.
Because of where she was at, she had taken it a different way. And I didn't even know that. I didn't even know the way that I was communicating, because then she's like, you need to dumb it down or do this and that. So then I would break it down differently. And then she would feel insulted, like, you think I'm just like a second grader or third grader? And then I'm like, I can't win.
So the point of that is to have that self-awareness to understand those dynamics that change. Something as simple as being able to communicate what you're wanting out of a conversation, all the way to an expectation that's set for the family, for your family culture. So
now, how does that look on bigger issues?
So what would be, if somebody is watching and they're like, okay, what's a bigger issue?
Disapproving of a way a spouse manages money, a way a spouse manages the kids,
time,
manage their health, time management, any of those. And it's just little jabs, right? Typically it manifests itself in either real heavy sarcasm, undercutting.
That's a big one for me.
Sarcasm about the situation, or why are we even going to try this, because you're never going to change, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that she said that. I'm just saying I've heard those conversations with friends. I've seen them being said, right? And when you catch yourself like treating your friends and everybody else kinder than you do your spouse,
That's a flag.
that should be a flag that there's something in there that hasn't been an unmet expectation or uncommunicated expectation that needs to be looked at and addressed. And in reality too, for us, another bigger one for us is, what does marriage look like? What does a wife look like? What does a husband's role look like? What is a mom? What does a dad look like? And when I say what does it look like, it's not like, this beautiful face. It's like, is a dad coaching all the sports? Are they dragging their kids out to do this or do that? Are they, is it mom, whatever, take your pick, some stereotypical role.
Mom, being the soccer mom, being the involved classroom mom, making everybody the cute little treat bags with everybody's name on a handwritten note.
They're all self-imposed things that nobody else is directly putting on you that you can absorb, because there was a couple-year period where my lovely bride was self-imposing all these things that had to be done as a mom to be a quote-unquote good mom, that nobody was putting on her but had been picked up somewhere. And it took us years to work through some of them, because she felt like she was failing as a mom. And there's times like right now I feel like I'm failing as a dad and a husband and leader of my home at times. And when I start doing that, I have to take it back to the Lord and say, Lord, is this expectation that I'm putting on myself from you? Yeah. Because what our family looks like, maybe nothing like what your family looks like. What our date night looks like, maybe nothing what your date night looks like. But the thing is, it's got to be unique to y'all, and it's got to be special to y'all and between you and the Lord.
So something that I want to bring up is, you don't fix a tree by taking off the bad fruit. The way that you fix a tree is by getting to the root of it. So if you see that a tree, obviously, if you want to take it in the natural, you see that a tree is producing something wrong with that fruit, go to the root of it and see that there may be a disease, or it may have gotten a bacteria, or it may have absorbed something in the soil that caused it to produce that. But the point is that on the outside is couples focus on the behavior of what they're seeing in their spouse versus where is this coming from. Right. So a lot of it is treating the symptom rather than the cause.
That's what I was going to say, is the fruit is an outward appearance of what's happening on the inside of a tree, right? Or a plant. Right. And in a relationship, that was one of the things that radically changed our marriage. And I'll be blunt, and I know my wife's okay with me sharing stuff. What it took for us to change was for me to decide that I was going to stop it. I had to move first as a spiritual leader of my house. And I had to start undercutting the sarcasm and the issues that we were having, regardless of if Megan ever came around or not. Yeah. So I had to change the tone of our conversations. I took a lot more ownership, and I've had friends call me and be like, man, you seem like a doormat sometimes. And it's like, well, is that conversation worth losing part of the relationship with my spouse? Like, obviously Megan calls me, is very upset with me, and is chewing me out about something, which doesn't happen very often, but she's just hot about something, and nothing's really happened. Like, know your spouse well enough to know, like, it's really not about what they're complaining about. There's another issue that's going on. And if you know that there's another issue going on, that's where that prayer comes in. We've talked about before, Lord, help me see my spouse how you see them and love them how you love them. Because when I love my spouse but hate sin, and we're all caught up in sin and lies, then I can hate the lie, love my spouse, see through the frustration that's coming out because of lies that she's believed, lies that I've believed, and lies the enemy's trying to sow between us to separate us, to know that God's ordained this union. We just got to figure out where the miscommunication is, and we'll work through it.
Something that we've heard a lot in our circles, be it close friends or be it acquaintances, something that we've heard a lot is spouses, I'm not calling it blame shift, but spouses saying, I'm always the one that picks up the kids. I'm always the one that washes their clothes. I'm always the one that has to pack the lunches.
I do everything around
I do everything
Nobody
around
else
here.
does
And we actually were joking about making a reel that is,
No,
and
we're
we've
going
seen
to.
it. Oh, we're going to. Okay. We've seen it before, but where the wife is like, I guess I'm the only one in this house that can see it. You know, that
No, my eyes are the only ones.
My eyes are the only ones in this house that can see the trash on the floor. My eyes are the only ones that can see these.
My back's the only one that works where I can pick up the stuff.
Yeah, but the point of that is that you're constantly arguing about an issue of you are not appreciated, nor do you feel seen by your spouse. Because if you did, then clearly they would understand that this is bothering you.
Well, it's like if you really married somebody that's that narcissistic, that they don't give a rip about you, then it says something about your judgment.
Yeah.
Right? And Megan used to, I would say something, and this is a funny anecdotal story about it.
Oh boy.
I would say something and Megan would be like, that's a lie. Or no, it didn't. And I was like, you're right, you married a compulsive liar.
Yeah. You
I lie about everything.
You're right, I'm a compulsive liar.
I was like, when have I ever been a compulsive liar? When, like, I struggle with things, lying's not one of them. And I'm like, I'm almost honest to a fault. I've been like, if you ever want to hear something, don't ask me, because I'll tell you the truth whether you want to hear it or not. And she's like, well, I think you're lying about that. And I'm like, okay, I'm a compulsive liar.
Also, don't subconsciously have these expectations over your spouse by allowing yourself to have those frustrations. Like, well, they should just know. They should just know. I mean, we've been married for 5 years. We've been married for 6 months. We've been married for 27 years. I mean, what, fill in the blank. But just saying things like, they should just know how I feel. Okay, well, do you want to share?
Which one?
I mean, you can pick one. Just pick one. Maybe not.
No, okay. Not right now.
Okay, maybe not.
I'm already not that nice.
Too fresh? Oh, go ahead. We are very, very, we're not ashamed of anything. We're still working through. These are things that are real, that are happening in lives. Well, go ahead.
My daughter's hair products. So
I didn't know that Sophie had curly hair. Okay, I did not know that she was born with curly hair. Thankfully, someone at our church, I'll go ahead and say her name, Tina Ocañas, aka La Jefa. La Jefina. Michael calls her Jefina. I approached her one day and I said, hey, can you cut Sophie's hair? It's getting really thick. It's getting out of hand. And she said, honey, do you know that Sophia has naturally wavy hair? And I said, news to me. I had no idea. I don't have wavy hair. How do you handle that? And she said, and she gave me the process of it. Of course, I went on a rampant search of TikTok videos of how to manage curly and wavy hair. Long story short, it is a process. Can I get an amen? So it is a process starting from the moment that we untie her hair to getting it wrapped back up in a bun ready for bed. So, continue.
I did not put the proper products in the proper sequence with a tight enough bun, with the proper placement of the scrunchy thing, the little hair tie.
Yeah.
And I did not receive the memo.
Proper training
to understand that her hair has to be wet and conditioned before you can brush it. And if you're not supposed to brush it if it's not, and you're supposed to put it a certain way up with a certain sequence. And I didn't do it, and I got home and I got educated from my Colombiana esposa.
It frustrated me because, and I actually said the words, you should know how to do this. What? Has he spent the time looking at it? No. But my frustration was, the underlying core issue is I'm the only one that cares. I'm the only one that pays attention to my daughter's needs. That was my core issue. So that's fresh.
Sophie, we have a daughter.
That's fresh. Okay. So the point of this is, so if you understand that your car needs regular maintenance and checkups, why wouldn't your marriage? If it is an ongoing relationship, why wouldn't you want to check in and do the same for your marriage? So
because a lot of times we just treat it, though, we fix the problem, let's move on, let's not deal with it, sweep it under the rug or whatever, right? Yeah. But it's like everything in life, it deteriorates. Things can deteriorate if left to their own devices.
Yeah. And
it requires work to maintain it and keep it in proper working order.
So take those little cue points. The moment that your spouse, or the moment that your spouse has that,
I uncharacteristically
reaction.
frustrated.
Yeah, frustration to a situation. Take a moment to pull back and just say, okay, there's a trigger point here.
Or in yourself.
Right. I mean, that's this one. Yeah, either you or your spouse. And if you have an unrealistic, okay, let's address what is unrealistic. What is an unrealistic reaction?
Or even if it is realistic. Is it realistic or not? Was it communicated or not? Am I married to a habitual liar?
Stop it.
And then at the end of the day, you can play one of two cards. You can either choose to love your spouse or try to change your spouse.
You're not going to change them.
Because how often are you able to change yourself, right? And we struggle with that, much less changing somebody else. And so whatever card you play, God's going to play the other card. And I guarantee you, he can change your spouse and change your own heart faster than you can. And when you own your own and you start looking within, Lord, what in this situation did I contribute to, or what can I do to help this situation help bring restitution and restoration back towards you? It'll really start easing those tense moments.
And this is something that I do very often, especially whenever because I am a firecracker and I am very reactive.
What?
And I've had to get better because I
was the emotional one.
I don't want my children to have the same core issues that I had because of reactions. And so I have to be very sensitive to this. And I'm asking the Lord constantly, Lord, let the meditation of my heart, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight. But here's another one. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. That's Psalms 139, verse 23 and 24. So
that's a scary prayer.
Ask the Lord for revelation of those moments that are hot topics for you. Ask the Lord for revelation of an opportunity to bring those up to your spouse and to have that a sacred conversation. We call them sacred conversations because it's like I'm opening up something about me that I'm really not even sure that I can work through, but I'm needing your help, and I'm depending on you to be someone that I can trust. And it can be something big, it can be something small, but ask the Lord, first of all, cover it with the Lord, and just ask him to allow that to happen, and ask him to allow the Holy Spirit to illuminate those things that are in your own life that you are not allowing him to work through because, this is who I am. This has made me who I am. This is going to make me, a stronger person. A lot of the popular songs that people know, there was a popular one that came out. I have a really hard time with that because the weight gets put on you, and we were never meant to carry that weight. The Lord said, cast your cares on me, cast all of your anxieties on me, and I'll make your burden easy and the load will be light. He's the one that's supposed to carry those, not you. And it's almost like people wear them as a badge. It's like I can wear that scar as a badge of what makes me strong.
We live in a culture of self-made people, bootstrapping it, right? And there's a sense of pride and a sense of accomplishment in saying, look what I did, look what I accomplished, look what I overcame. And you get one of two things: either look what I overcame, look what I did, or look what happened to me and look what they did to me, which is also about me. And if you think back about your statement earlier, how come I have to do this? I guess I'm the only one. The common theme in all of that is self-focus. And getting our eyes off of ourselves and how we feel. And I'm not saying that our feelings are irrelevant, but I'm saying if we get our eyes off of how something affects us per se, and then see how the Lord processes it and how he can use it, it can make us a lot more effective in life.
So this is another question that we've heard come up often, and that is, what if my spouse won't change?
Yeah.
What if they keep repeating that same cycle? And
so what are you going to do?
I mean, what am I going to do? I know that I'm not going to change you, and the focus has to be shifted off of you and say, Lord, I can't change my spouse. What is there in me that's not allowing me to see my spouse as your beloved son? What is it in me that's not allowing me and my focus and my expectation to be set on frustration, heartache, anger. What is it in me that's allowing me to hold on to that and not see my spouse and how you've made them and created them to be, and or even what I can do to encourage my spouse. Something that we've heard said before in the ministries that we've been part of is that the Lord puts you together, and I said this at the beginning of the podcast, the Lord puts you together to bring out your strengths. You can also have your weaknesses revealed, but your spouse is there to encourage the strengths that God has already placed in you. What could be a very stubborn-willed person, that is the makings of a great leader once they're bent towards the direction and the obedience of the Lord.
Because nothing will shake them. What
would be someone that is more, I don't want to say the word meek, but you just have a bend towards, retreating, or what would be like in a negative, like you retreat, or like a coward. What I'm trying to say is that could be used as a very compassionate and empathetic person to serve others, because you're already wanting to be there for another person. Be a peacemaker. Thank you. Yeah, be a peacemaker.
I think that's a big point, though, because a lot of our bents in life and a lot of our worldviews were caught rather than taught, right? Because there's a lot of things that I can say that I believe that I can't ever point at anything that ever taught me it, per se. Like, nobody ever said, we believe XYZ. It was just something that was caught over the years, either in community, in my family, in my life experiences. So we can't hold anything tighter than we hold our relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to give those to the Lord and test them against Scripture to see if they are worthy of our time, energy, and attention, and worth holding on to. And then it also is worth the energy it takes when you find one that isn't right or hasn't been right, because you don't want to keep passing that down if you've been propagating it in your own family.
So to bounce off of that is, okay, I found an area, but what if I feel overwhelmed?
Yeah.
What if it's something that I just don't think I can handle on my own? Start small. Focus on one area at a time. Start small. Don't try to eat the whole elephant at one time. Start small. Start with a conversation that was recent. Say, hey, when you said this, or actually when I heard this, put the blame on you.
This is how I felt.
Yeah, this is how I felt. And when I heard you say this, this is what this is what I'm hearing. Is this right? Start small. This is how I took it. And just remember that, and Michael has a perfect example of this, small, consistent efforts lead to transformation over time.
Yep.
So he has and he actually shared this example last Wednesday. When you're sharing the gospel with someone, if you've been placed in an opportunity where you have unbelievers that are mixed with believers, he used the example of a drip pan.
Talk about from work. It was a steam trap that was dripping, and it was a de-superheater, and it was dropping high pressure steam to lower pressure steam, and there was just a drop that came off one of the bleeds on the high pressure side,
and it's just this,
and it's just a little drop, like drip.
Just drip, barely what would seem like nothing.
And that plant had been there about 12 to 15 years, and that drip had eaten through about 18 to 24 inches of concrete.
Just straight concrete.
And all the way through to the dirt, just from that drip. And I was talking to them, and they said that it had dripped like that, because I asked them if there had ever been a heavy leak or anything, and they said no, it's just always been a really hot drip ever since we started up. And it just gave me a picture, and the Lord was like, a constant drip in the steadiness and steadfastness.
Consistent.
Going.
Small, consistent.
Water ate through what we would see as one of the toughest things that we enact on a surface, like concrete. And that water completely eroded through that concrete all the way through to the soil, just because of the consistency.
So something else is that God just calls us to be faithful. We're not the ones that are called to change our spouse, nor are we even called to be the ones that change ourselves. We are called to be faithful and obedient. That is what we are called to do. So focus on who you are becoming, and move the focus away from your spouse doing everything wrong. So focus on what the Lord's doing in you, and continue to pursue Him. Okay, so after this video, if you've watched it with your spouse, or if you're going to watch it with your spouse later, or if you're listening to it on the way to work, I want you to take an opportunity just to look for one area of personal growth. Okay, so for me in personal growth, I am trying to do better at following up. So when Michael and I have a conversation, especially our time is in the evening, I am trying to do better at following up with him. At some point in the day, trying to do a touch point with him where I follow up with a conversation that we had the night before. It shows that I'm actually listening, which he knows is an area of growth for me, period. Number two, it keeps us engaged and it keeps him at the forefront of my mind. Not what he's doing wrong, but how can I better serve my spouse, right? And it's something that I can control because it's my actions. I can't control his actions, but I can control my actions and how I perceive the conversation that we have the night before. Okay, so takeaways from this episode. Identify our core issues helps to develop a healthier marriage because it allows conversation. It allows an opportunity to address, and I'm not going to say irrational, but it allows an opportunity to address misunderstood blow-ups. Something as simple as the dishes weren't put up when I came home from work, and now you're mad at your spouse for a month and a half.
Ultimately, it ends up driving a deeper level of intimacy.
Yes. So a strong marriage starts with two emotionally healthy individuals. And if you're already saying, well, we're set up for failure because we're both screwed up, that's not true. Because once you belong to the Lord, you are a new creation.
It may be true for the moment, but it doesn't have to stay that way. It's
right.
Up to you to decide if you want to change it or not.
So, and also understand that healing can take time, especially depending on how deep the wound is. I mean, that's in the natural body. But also, I believe in miracles. I believe in a God that is in the business of miraculous healing. That's also in the physical and even in the relationships. But as long as you keep your heart towards the Lord and you keep your heart open to your spouse, the attitude shifts are more, it's easier for them to change in the favor of
you have a softer
healing.
heart that's easier to be molded.
Yeah, I mean, and that's even in scripture where it's like, Lord, I will turn your heart of stone into a heart of flesh. Because the Lord knows our iniquities, and he's the healer of our iniquities. And iniquities, I found out, or I learned that that's a word for the bend, like how sin has shifted or bent our character. So the Lord has healed that already through his death and his resurrection. He's already healed that. It was prophesied in Isaiah 53. He was bruised for our iniquities. He was wounded for our transgressions. The chastisement of our sin was upon him. So he's already taken care of it through Calvary. Even if your spouse does not change immediately or in the time and manner that you feel like it needs to happen, just know that any growth, and be encouraging that any growth that is taking place is going to make a big impact.
And frankly, you're not doing it for your spouse. You're doing it because you're commanded to. It goes back to forgiveness and obedience, right?
Yeah. So we'd like to encourage you to leave us your comments about this episode. Encourage you to continue to fight for your marriage, and we encourage you to continue to believe in the Lord for miracles over your marriage, and we just pray blessings over you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll see you on the next one.